now.
We're live now. Thank you for confirming. Over to you, Chairman.
Okay. Well, hello, good evening, everybody, and welcome to this virtual meeting of the Performance Management Scrutiny Committee. My name is Councillor Mick Radley, and I'm the chairman of this committee. Before I begin with the meeting, I just have a few items of general note. Please can I remind members that this evening's meeting is a non-decision making meeting. In terms of the meeting business, the agenda for this meeting includes an item pertaining to the scrutiny around the council's budget. All members of the council have therefore been invited to attend the meeting to enable them to receive an update on the council's budget for 2022-23, following the previous meeting held on the 5th of January 2022. Please note that only members of the Performance Management Scrutiny Committee will be invited to note the report. Members of the Cabinet are also present in order to present the item and to respond to any questions members may have. At this point, I'd like to welcome Councillor Graham Butland, the leader of the Council, and members of the Cabinet. I'm being assisted by governance officers who will help me to identify when people want to speak and manage the notifications through the chat function. This meeting is being broadcast to the public via the Council's YouTube channel. I obviously can't see all of you, so please let me know by using the chat function if there are any issues with your internet connection. Please also remember to mute your microphone when you finish speaking. Members of the committee, for this meeting, I will seek your agreement. When I seek your agreement, silence will be taken as assent. I shall now proceed with the business of the meeting. So agenda item 1 is apologies for absence. Are there any apologies to note from members of the Performance Management Scrutiny Committee this evening? Governance officers will make a separate note of any apologies from non-committee members. So do we have any apologies?
We have one apology, Councillor Radley, from Councillor Coleridge. That's the only one I'm aware of. Okay. Right, so we just have one from Councillor Coleridge. I don't know if there are any other apologies from anybody's passing any on. No. Okay. So thank you. If there are no further apologies, I will proceed with item 2, which is declarations of interest. Agenda item 2. Do members of the Performance Management Scrutiny Committee have any disclosable pecuniary interests, other pecuniary interests, or non-pecuniary interests that they wish to declare this evening? If so, please indicate via the chat function. Right. Okay. No. Okay. There appear to be no declarations. So if there are no declarations, I will proceed to item 3, which is minutes of the previous meeting. So item 3, please can I have a proposer to approve the minutes as an accurate record of the previous meeting of the Performance Management Scrutiny Committee on the 5th of January 2022. If members could plus indicate through the chat function. Oh, Councillor Rose, are you proposing?
Yeah, yes, I'll propose, Chairman.
Thank you. And do I have a seconder?
I'll second that, Councillor Dervish.
Okay,
thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Dervish. That is fantastic. Thank you for that. Right. Members, the minutes have been moved and seconded as an accurate record. I will take silence as agreement, but please indicate in the chat function if you wish to speak. Okay. Thank you, members. Your silence is agreement to the minutes as an accurate record. I will now sign the document. Oops. Okay. Right, let's move on now to item 4, which is public question time. Members, I can confirm that there are no registered speakers for this evening's meeting. Members will now proceed to agenda item 5, which is scrutiny of the council's budget for 2022-2023 update. Members, please note that the budget report for this item has been prepared for the Cabinet and full council meetings of the 7th of February 2022 and the 21st of February 2022 respectively. For this meeting, both committee members and non-committee members have been provided with a hard copy of the budget report. Before we commence this item, I would like to set out the order in which members will participate. I will shortly invite Councillor Graham Butland, the leader of the council, and Phil Myers, the head of finance, to present the budget update report. Following the report, I will open up this item for questions. Members of the committee will be invited to ask questions of the Cabinet first, and then I will invite questions from all other members in attendance as part of the member development session. Please can I invite Councillor Batman and Phil Myers to present the updated report. Thank you. Councillor Batman.
Thank you, Chairman. Good evening to you and members of the committee. With your permission, I would like to make a general statement of the situation as it has changed since our last meeting on the 5th of January, to refer specifically to 2 issues which your committee raised at the last meeting, namely the collection fund surplus and also the councillor grant scheme. And I'll be asking my colleague, Councillor Ritchie, to comment on that. And then finally, what this means for council tax. If that's okay with you, Chairman, that's how I'll take it. Clearly, the provisional local government settlement was announced on the 16th of December, and at your last meeting on the 5th of January, we provided you with a high-level summary whilst we were considering the detail. I'd like to begin by thanking all the officers, and particularly Phil Myers, for the tremendous amount of work that they have put in a relatively short period of time to get us to where we are today. The summary of the main changes that have taken place since the 5th of January. If I can deal first of all with business rates. The business rate baseline has now been confirmed at 3.5 million. This is the amount of business rates the council is able to retain under the current finance system, above which a levy is paid. The council will be compensated for the freeze on the rating multiplier used to calculate chargeable amounts. Sorry, it's so technical, Chairman, but there is no easy way to do this. Overall, the council's estimated share of business rate income for 2022-23 will be 5.2 million, as we initially reflected in the initial budget proposals. There have been some changes to grant allocations to the council. The Revenue Support Grant, the RSG, a small amount of additional RSG has been allocated to the council, and I do mean small, £555, as a result of the government rolling into the distribution formula a grant that was previously allocated separately. The lower tier services grant, which we received in the current financial year and was not necessarily going to be allocated this year, the government have decided that this grant will be allocated for a second year. And as far as Braintree District Council is concerned, that means an additional £156,000. And the third area is a new unring-fenced grant for 2022-23, which the government have introduced, which is known as a services grant. This grant is to recognise the vital services delivered at every level of local government, and also to cover the increase in employer national insurance contributions from April 2022. The additional amount there, Chairman, is £240,000. Combined, those 3 grants result in an additional £397,000 of additional income in 2022-23 over that which we previously assumed and reported to you in January. I should make the point that the local government funding scheme is again, unfortunately, a single year settlement, which means that beyond 2022-23, the financial resources available to the council remain uncertain. A review of local authority needs and resources is to be undertaken, with consultation on any potential changes, including options or on traditional protection. But there is clearly a question mark over future year fundings. At our meeting on the 5th of January, we projected a budget shortfall for 22-23 of £472,000. And across the full medium-term financial strategy, a base budget gap of 1.2 million. Taking into account the grant funding, the changes in the grant funding that we have now been informed of, the shortfall for 22-23 has been reduced to 93,000. It is proposed to meet this estimated shortfall initially from the unallocated general fund balance, which will enable a budget and council tax level to be set. Given the uncertainty that remains over future funding, the improvement in financial position for 22-23 is currently considered one-off, so the projected base budget shortfall over the medium-term financial strategy remains at 1.2 million and has been profiled, Chairman, as 925,000 in 23-24, 119,000 shortfall in 24-25, and 198,000 shortfall in 25-26. As we said in January, plans are in place and being developed to address the projected shortfalls over the period of the medium-term financial strategy. Though I cannot hide the fact that it will be quite tough to establish where we will get another 1.2 million. Since our meeting in January, we've had confirmation that the Essex Business Rate Pool will continue for 2022-23. Participation in previous years has resulted in the council retaining over £3 million of extra business rate income, which we have used mainly to part fund the iConstruct Innovation Centre, which was officially opened last week, and the new Horizon 120 Enterprise Centre. As far as fees and charges are concerned, we have reviewed all the fees and charges, and they are, and I don't intend to go through them, Chairman, they're a rather big Appendix O in your papers, and they will go to Cabinet at our meeting next week, and for approval to go forward to full council. What I would say is, I think when you look at it, you will see that we have not been, we've not attempted to raise the costs of things any more than was absolutely necessary. And I think that is shown through the vast number of charges there. Some charges, of course, we have no say over. They are ones that are imposed nationally, and we have to deal with them in that way. If I can turn to the new homes bonus, the government, we're pleased to say, has proposed to continue to allocate new homes bonus using the same methodology that applied in 2021-22. And on that basis, the council has been allocated 1.4 million. It was also announced that the outstanding legacy payments of 225,000 would also be paid. These amounts will be added to the current uncommitted balance of the new homes bonus received in previous years and provide a total of 3.8 million. It has always been our policy in Braintree not to incorporate the new homes bonus in our revenue expenditure, but actually to put it towards capital and infrastructure projects, and that we will intend to do. What we will be coming forward with by the time of the council budget is a plan which will detail how we intend to use that new homes bonus. And my colleague, Councillor Cunningham, will be making a detailed statement at council on that. So I now turn to the two issues which exercised the committee members at their last meeting. If I can deal first with the collection fund surplus, and then I'll ask Councillor Ritchie to deal with the issue of the councillor community grant scheme. As you'll be aware, Chairman, we, in our original proposals, said that we would not be intending to use the collection fund surplus by way of distribution to parish and town councils, which I will refer to for the rest of the thing as local councils. I just want to put a little bit of background for members to these payments and how we intend to move forward. The payment to local councils of a share of the collection fund surplus started in 2015-16. At that time, I wrote to all local councils indicating that this would be a one-off additional payment. And that was to reflect the better than expected collection from council tax in the 2 years following the introduction of the local council tax scheme. Although it was originally indicated that in 2015-16 that it would be a one-off payment, a share of the estimated collection fund balance has been paid to local councils every year since then, up to and including the current financial year 2021-22. This decision has been taken annually by full council following the determination of the estimated collection fund balance. This allocation can only be agreed annually as the balance available for distribution, if any, is influenced by many different factors. The treatment of any collection fund estimated balance is set out in statutory regulations, which mean that only billing authorities, such as Braintree District Council, and the major precepting authorities, such as Essex County Council and the Police and Fire Commissioner, benefit directly from any surplus in the collection fund. However, similarly, only those authorities, the District Council, the County Council, and the Police and Fire Commissioner, face the risk of a deficit having to be recovered should the amount of council tax not be collected, and therefore impacting upon their budgets and council tax. Local councils precept on the general fund of the district council, and therefore the amount that they receive through council tax is essentially guaranteed irrespective of the actual performance of the collection fund. So local councils are at no risk of having to make up any potential deficit. The proportion of the surplus voluntarily paid to local councils has been determined by using the precept values of the year preceding the relevant budget year. And the amounts paid by BDC since 2015-16 to local councils is totaled over £200,000. As I say, not a payment that needed to be done by statute, a payment that we said was one-off in 2015-16, and one given the position that I've already mentioned about the medium-term financial strategy and the uncertainty, one that we have had to review. Mr. Chairman, we have given serious consideration to the representations that have been made. We have watched with interest the budget setting of many of our town and parish councils. We have examined the overall surpluses and balances of our towns and parish councils. And on this occasion, we are inclined, subject to cabinet decision and of course full council, not to make any additional allocations to local councils this year from the collection fund surplus. If I can turn now to the councillor community grant scheme, and if I can ask Councillor Ritchie to respond back to the committee following the representations that we heard at the last meeting. Could I please hand over to Councillor Ritchie, Chairman?
Yes, absolutely fine. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Batman. Good evening, Chairman and committee members. Thank you for allowing me to update you on this. As you remember, on the 5th of January, the Council Community Grant Scheme was a well-debated topic at the last committee meeting, and rightly so. We've had a chance to reflect on a number of those comments, and as you can see in the updated report this evening, the new proposal is to actually increase from the originally allotted £1,000 per council member up to £1,250. We feel this is a fair compromise, given that all the budget lines across this authority's spending account was looked at in great detail. What I will say to committee members is, although we've proposed this increase, we will still have to carefully look at what is spent, not just individually per councillor, but as a total amount throughout the year and as we come to the budget setting next year, and we will keep it under review. Obviously, a funding line like this, if it's all spent, makes it much easier to make a business case to include the amounts in preceding years' budgets. So if I can make a final request to all members this evening, the Council Community Grant Scheme is a well-used scheme, and if I can just, obviously I'm a passionate advocate for the scheme. It's in my portfolio. It's there, and I would hope that everyone makes use of it throughout this upcoming year and into 2023. Obviously, there is the rollover from this year too, so there is going to be some extra amounts to help some community groups bounce back. But please make full use of this scheme. You were all really passionate about it at the last committee meeting, and that message was loud and clear. So we're hoping this proposal of £1,250 is acceptable. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor.
Okay.
So finally, Chairman, the sort of bottom line, as a result of the changes that have taken place, we will be considering as a cabinet an increase in council tax. It's unfortunate, and we recognise that this will come at the same time as a number of other increases in living costs that will be hitting all families, not just obviously through Braintree District, but throughout the country. However, our increase of £4.95 for the year, that's not a week or a month, it's for the year, which would take a standard Band D house tax for the district percentage to £189.63. That is an increase of 2.68%, which I'm sure members will recognise is significantly below the current level of inflation, and one that we have sought to keep to a minimum. So that will be, assuming my colleagues support that at Cabinet and bring it forward to full council, and it is supported there, will be the recommendation to council, and that recommendation is in your report tonight at 2.1.21 on page 5, a Band D council tax of £189.63, a 2.68. I would say, Chairman, that still leaves us significantly down the list of district councils throughout Essex in terms of the rate of council tax that we levy. Chairman, that's all I have to say. Hopefully that's a brief summary of the changes that have taken place. Not huge changes since we met in January, and myself and my colleagues will try and answer any questions there might be. Thank you, Chairman. Okay, well, thank you very much, Councillor Batman and Councillor Rickey, for that update. It's very useful, those explanations. So as Chairman, I would like to give all members the opportunity to ask questions, and I've already given guidance in that regard. I would be grateful for members' cooperation to be concise as possible with their questions and not repeat questions already asked. I will start by asking if any members of the Performance Management Scrutiny Committee have any questions for Cabinet. And if you do, could you please indicate through the chat function.
Okay, I've got a few questions coming through. So the first one of those is Councillor Rose. So Councillor Rose, over to you.
Yes, thank you. Good evening, Chairman. Good evening, members. I'm just going to refer initially to some information that was on the Tell Me More District Council News publication, and it's regarding electrical waste recycling. 7,000 tonnes of unwanted electrical and electronic equipment, known as WEEE, was collected in the district in 2020. The items are stored at the waste transfer station, where the items are then collected by the county council, who recycle them. My questions are, Chairman, is there any cost to BDC for those actions? And two, does BDC receive any revenue for the items? And if so, what was the amount that we received? I'm looking at towards the investment and development programme, where we're closing that gap in funding, Chairman. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Rose, for that one. Councillor Batman, do you have a?
Could I ask Councillor Mrs. Schmidt, Councillor Van Dolken to respond?
Indeed,
please?
Indeed.
Yes, I'm happy to comment on that.
Okay.
If with your permission,
indeed, carry on,
Chairman. First of all, can I point out that the figure should be 7 tonnes and not 7,000 tonnes.
That's what's published, Richard.
I appreciate that, and it had been corrected in later publications. So it's 7 tonnes or 7,000 kilos. To answer your question, I will have to get back to you on that. We have a vehicle that goes around the district, as many of you may know, and I hope that your residents are using that. It comes to Great Yeldon, for instance, on Thursday mornings, and it's a very worthwhile thing to do. So if there is a cost, that's fine. As far as I'm concerned, we do need to do all we can in that respect. It is not going to be a huge amount, and I will, if that's all right with you, get an answer to you on that.
That's fine. Thank you, Chairman.
Okay, thank you, guys. Right, next question is from Councillor Raymond. Councillor Raymond, over to you.
Thank you, Chairman.
Oh, you're there. Well done.
And thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would also like to thank you, the Leader of the Council, Councillor Batman, and the Cabinet Member, Councillor Ricky, for their presentation. It is rather a comment instead of a question. I welcome the proposal of the increase of the council tax on page 7. The increase, as the Leader has mentioned in his report, is below the inflation rates, and it's a good news for the young families and the families who live in the District Council of Braintree, that it's not a significant increase and they can afford that. I really welcome the proposal. I have a question on the second paragraph. There is extra council tax which were collected or which will be collected. Please correct me if I'm wrong. There is a surplus of 198k in that head. And on the page 7, paragraph 6, it says, whilst also being able to invest in the priorities that matters to residents and businesses. If any of the cabinet member could elaborate where the extra funding and extra balance would be spent to help the residents or the businesses, please.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Raymond. Councillor Batman, looks like you're about to say something.
This, of course, is the what I was referring to earlier, and is the surplus 198,000. That will go into, if I can put it into the general pot, which means that we are providing services, cover all services. There are no specific items that will cover. but it does mean, of course, that that is less money that we've had to raise or find in terms of 22-23.
Okay, thank you for that response. Now next is Councillor Courthold is next to ask a question. Councillor Courthold.
Thank you, Chairman. I'd like to address this to Councillor Batman, please. Talking about the collection fund surplus and the disinclination to pay it out, partly on the basis that it was a one-off in 2015-16. Do you think that the local councils are anticipating this? And do you think that they're depending on something and that they've forgotten that it was a one-off? And if you think that they are, do you think we should warn them, as they may not be aware this is coming, and they might be have sort of projects which won't happen without it?
Thank
Okay,
you,
yes,
Chairman.
yes.
Thank you, Councillor Courthold. No local council should have made any budget statement with any anticipation that there would be anything from the collection surplus, because as I said in my statement, that isn't made until full council has its budget meeting. So given that most local councils will have been considering their budgets in November and December in time to submit their figures to BDC so that the preset amounts can be agreed, etc. No local council should have anticipated that this year, or indeed any other year. Now, I think it's a case of you do get things and you automatically assume that it's going to continue. I mean, we are talking in total for some authorities, for some local councils, the very small ones. I mean, I have got unfortunately not readily to hand here, but you know, some of the payments are barely in three figures as to what they are getting. I should also say, of course, that local councils, the third tier of local government, is the only tier that isn't capped. So they can raise their council tax or precept by whatever amount they wish. So if there are local projects which they feel they want to fund, then they have the ability to raise that directly from the beneficiaries, i.e. their residents, for that, either in one go or over a period of years, depending on how they've done it. And a number of authorities have done that or are keeping reserves which they are specifically earmarking for a local project in their area. And that is very good housekeeping on their part. So following this, we will be obviously informing them that it is unlikely that the council will agree this year to anything, but it should not have been assumed, because it's not a decision which is taken until full council budget meeting. I hope that explains the situation.
It does. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that answer. Next we have Councillor Everard. Councillor Everard, over to you.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, this lowering of the government funding to the councils in the future, I presume that we're going to have to rely on our own enterprises as well as council tax in order to make up the difference. I have another question, but I'll leave that for the moment.
Do you want to just quickly respond? Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you, Councillor Raymond. Yes, you're quite right, and that's one of the reasons why we have established an investment group looking at how we use our capital resources. We can use capital resources in two ways, and we are trying to steer a reasonable balance between that. You can invest purely in projects which have a social return, but not a financial return. So facilities that will meet a need in a community, but won't raise money. Or you can also spend it on projects such as Horizon 120 or other industrial units or that sort of thing, where one is looking for a financial return on the money, so that means you are, if you like, recycling the money that way. We have not decided to go all the way down one line or the other. I think you will see when we, particularly when we look at how we're going to use the new homes bonus and other reserves, that we feel we are striking a balance between funding a number of community initiatives, which are there for community payback, and a number of initiatives which are for financial payback. But clearly, your overall thing is that, yes, as local authorities, we are having to find more ourselves.
Thank you,
Okay.
but what as you know, I really am campaigning for a Braintree Theatre, and I think that's very important for Braintree.
I'd love to be able to say yes, there next week. I have to be honest, quite clearly on this, that I cannot in the near future foresee a Braintree Theatre purely funded from Braintree District Council. Much though, because I like to go along and watch, and I know Councillor Everard likes to go along and perform. So, but I can't hold out any false promises on that. I just do not think at the present time that is a runner.
Okay, but I do hope that we are going to think about putting things together towards that end. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. Next question is from Councillor Sphere. Councillor Sphere.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Firstly, I'd just like to say that I really do welcome the increase in the councillor community grants that is proposed from 1,000 to 1,250. As I know, especially across many of the rural wards, that these are highly appreciated by our communities and those that are really active in them as well. And it's been a considerably difficult time from COVID-19. So I think this will be really appreciated across the board by not only the rurals but urban, but the whole grant process, I think, is vital for us and will helping those communities and will be appreciated. My question is with regards to, I noticed in the building control charges, I'm just wondering if the increases in those is actually enough, taking all of the cost pressures that we are facing at Braintree District Council and also the level of inflation, because some of them seem relatively small for services that are provided. So I'd just like a comment on that, please. Thank you.
Okay.
Through you, Chairman. Thank you, Councillor Schmidt. Building control charges, I think, might be Councillor Mrs. Spray, or if yes, it is. No, it's Councillor Mrs. Schmidt. Sorry, who's underneath Councillor Mrs. Spray on my screen. So if Councillor Mrs. Schmidt could deal with that, and then I'll just come back on the important point you raised about our communities, etc. Councillor Mrs. Schmidt.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, in fact, it's a higher rise than we've had before, because indeed, since government allowed private individuals to start doing building control work, it's made costing for us very, very difficult. But we have to continue the service because we have some statutory responsibilities. And I can assure Councillor Schmidt that we are covering our costs. We had to put up prices. We don't like to. They are mainly one-off costs for people who are having an extension or a new house or something. So it's not as if it's something that really covers a large number of our public. And so, yes, I can assure you we have covered our costs. We can't price ourselves out of the market. when we're up against the other people doing it. And so I can assure you, we have done what we can, and it is a good figure.
On the first point that Councillor Schmidt raised about the Councillor grant and how much that was valued, not just in the urban areas, but particularly in the rural areas. Councillor Schmidt, as a county councillor, like myself, will be aware that the county council agreed on the beginning of January, published on the beginning of January, its levelling up programme for Essex. And if any of our members have not yet read it, could I suggest that you do have a look at that, because the county council has identified 6 priority areas throughout the county for additional funding through some of the initiatives that are there. And one of the priority areas is rural Braintree. And I'm absolutely delighted, and I'm sure Councillor Schmidt is also equally delighted, because whilst one can identify urban areas, an estate in Basildon or Jaywick in Tendring, etc., it has always been my contention that there is equally deprivation and social exclusion within rural areas. The trouble is, in many cases, it's hidden because it isn't a collection of people in a particular area. And so we have, in fact, only this morning, the Chief Executive and myself met with Louise McKinley, the lead cabinet member at Essex County Council, and officers there to discuss the sort of things that we feel might well need to be looked at. And one of the things that's crossed my mind is that we might be able to use, those of us in rural Braintree might want to think about how we use some of our councillor money to support programmes coming from there. And certainly I know as a county councillor with the resources that we also get, that I hope we might be able to get together, and particularly the Three Fields bit of my division, and Councillor Schmidt has the largest, I think, by way of space, rural area in Headingham, and our colleague who represents the Halstead division, Councillor Siddle, to look how we might do that, because I think it is important that we provide it. And I have been surprised, I have to say, at some parish councils when I've raised this and given it, people saying, we don't have any deprivation here. I'm sorry, but there are people in rural areas, if you don't have transport, and we know the lack of public transport there is, and if you have mental health issues or even just getting a prescription or something like that, you can have a real problem. And for younger people living in those areas who may be searching for a job or an apprenticeship, one of the biggest bugbears is actually being able to get to work, etc. So I do believe we just need perhaps, I know Councillor Ritchie is thinking, just need to focus a bit more that it perhaps isn't the best way for communities to spend it in some of the ways we've been doing. And we perhaps need to think about how we can direct it more to people who are in need. So I think there's a debate for us to have on that over the coming year.
Okay, thank you for that, Councillor Batman. I do believe that looking at the chat function, do any more questions from any members of the Performance Management Scrutiny Committee come through? Doesn't look like it. I've just got a few comments to make myself, and then I'll open it up to the rest of the floor. So first of all, thank you for giving this committee the opportunity to scrutinise the budget proposals once again before their final submission. It is good to see that the overall shortfall has reduced from last year at £1.6 million over the 4 years to a gap for the next 4 years of 1.2 million. And also, it should be noted at the same time incorporating a range of new and important priorities like planning enforcement, climate change support and cycling strategies. The levels of savings in the report that have been identified is around £500,000 for next year, slightly less than that, but around about half. Now that is significant, and a significant factor in helping to fund these new items. And I believe everybody involved in identifying these savings should be congratulated. It's a good performance, and without that, a lot of the good things that have been proposed wouldn't have happened. And hopefully, as we move forward, more savings can be generated through the investment and development plan as it gathers momentum. It's also good to see the government funding for the services grant, which has added £240,000 in, which is a good contributor to the overall picture. I thank you for the response on the council tax surplus and the comments that you've made. It probably won't surprise you for me to say that I'm disappointed that this is still being proposed, and this is not being shared back to the parishes and towns. I understand it's legally not a requirement, but I actually believe it's totally wrong not to pay this money back. Whether we've said we were going to, or 1 year, or how many years, it's actually just totally wrong. When the budget is set by, and therefore the precept is set, is based upon the tax base at the point of setting the precept at that time. And that tax base is based upon the previous year. I think it's fixed at the end of November. And towns and parish councils set their precept based upon that. The reason we have a surplus in the council tax surplus fund is because the reality is that in the coming year, there are more properties being built, and therefore more properties paying council tax. That is the prime driver. There are other factors as well, but it's the main driver. So had those councils known that money is actually coming into Braintree Council as the billing authority from those additional properties. So the parish council share of that actually rightly belongs to them. Now, I understand the legislation says about it being the major preceptors, and that is what it is, but it's still wrong. It's money that's been collected by the billing authority from the additional housing that's occurred since the precept was set by the town and parish councils, and it rightly belongs to them. And I think this is a wrong approach being taken. I agree that they shouldn't depend upon it and budget for it. It's not something you would budget because it is a variable figure. In previous years, as you quite rightly know, this figure the decision on this was made by council normally in December, a December council meeting, and therefore it is known by and that is known and published at that time in previous years. So it is known by the councils when they set their precept. So and whether they've got reserves or haven't got reserves, or I think is immaterial. It's money belonging to them and should go back to them. So anyway, that's my comment on that, and I'll remain disappointed, I guess. You may comment if you wish.
I don't want to get into an argument, Chairman. We did. All I can say is we did seriously consider all the representations that were made on this, and the only thing I would say is they don't have a right to it, and perhaps, if I hadn't in 2015-16 said we would give it, I wouldn't be facing this problem now. So in retrospect, perhaps we shouldn't have done it in 15-16, but at least there's been £202,000, which would not have gone to town and parish councils in any other district in Essex.
Yeah.
So grateful for small mercies, maybe, Chairman.
Indeed, and there's no reason why we shouldn't be different, though. We'll leave it at that. Okay. On that point, thank you, members of the committee. I'll now open up the discussion to the rest of the members present. Do any members wish to ask questions of the Cabinet? If so, please indicate through the chat function. Okay, we can start by Councillor Abbott. Councillor Abbott, you're the first to go, so over to you, sir.
Thank you, Chairman. I agree with the leader's comments that we've got the nearly £400,000 in from government grant, which is obviously improves our situation, but that we can't rely on that in future years. That's a point that's accepted. However, I would gently point out to him that we could increase, if we were legally allowed to, we could increase the council tax by 5% and still say it was under the rate of inflation. I think in our communications with residents, as I raised at the January meeting of this committee, people are going to face a very big cost of living impact this year from council tax. Essex is what, 4.5%. So I would imagine the net council tax is going to be over 4%. The increase of fuel prices, national insurance, etc. So I'm just wondering if that's an appropriate message we should be saying to residents. Well, it's below inflation. I mean, if inflation goes to 8%, you know, how long's a piece of string? That's my point there. Very much agree with the point made by the chairman of the committee about planning enforcement. That really is very welcome investment. I mean, in my neck of the wood here, myself and Councillor Wright and fellow councillors down here in this corner of the district, planning is a huge issue because of the amount of development going on. So the ability of the council to better control that development and make sure developers do what they're supposed to be doing is important. Got a couple of questions on the councillor community grant. 2 points really. If we was to keep it £1,500 a year, am I right in thinking that would only be another 12,000 above what we're currently budgeting for 1250? And what's the harm in keeping it 1,500, given that if that's not spent, we don't lose it? And related to that, do we keep the carryover? So will there be a permanent carryover that if a member doesn't spend that money, it carries on to the next year? Second question, in terms of planning, it was well over a year ago now that the council agreed to have planning forums. Has that been budgeted for separately, or is it within the general planning function, and when are we likely to see those? And third question, I thought it was interesting what the leader said about the balance between community spending, social spending on capital and economic investment, but he knows what I'm going to say next. We still do not have a mechanism for involving all members of this council in a dialogue on what that spend should be. And it's great that all these fantastic projects are going on in the Braintree area, but when this is levelling up within Braintree district, when are we going to have a conversation about some of that capital spend for those really important local social projects, and maybe some economic ones as well, coming into other towns and villages in the district? Thank you, Chairman.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Abbott. Councillor Batman.
Thank you. I'll answer some, and I'll ask the issue on planning resources to Councillor Mrs. Spray and Councillor Ritchie, if he can respond on the councillor community grants. Can I say, I think we said in January that we would, at the outset of the next civic year, would go out to all members asking for any proposals they might have for capital expenditure, so that they can be evaluated, etc., in time for inclusion in budget considerations for 2023-24. Previously, we've gone out almost at the time that the budget is being done, and that seems to me not to be the most sensible thing. So that commitment remains, Councillor Abbott, and that's how we will enable all members of the council to come forward with proposals for consideration for inclusion in capital programme. It's a bit, I suppose, yes, 12,000 here, and I mean, we've listened very much, and Councillor Abbott has been one of the strongest proponents of more resource being put to planning enforcement. 200,000 is a not insignificant amount to do, but it does mean that that's 200,000 that if we didn't spend, yes, we could support the other view that might reduce the increase in council tax. I am not in any way dismissing the fact that the council tax is still more than it is at present. Although it's below the rate of inflation, which is a statement of fact, it is still more, albeit on a Band D property, less than 30 pence. Let's get this right, £4.95 a year. Yes, less than 30 pence a week. Not a huge amount, but he is right in that I am fully expecting there to be significant increases from the larger preceptors. And of course, the largest preceptor will be Essex County Council. And the largest proportion of Essex County Council precept will be for social care. Over 60% of its budget will be for social care. And of that 60%, nearly 80% will be spent on the 17,000 most vulnerable people in the county. And so I think all councils, whether they're upper tier, lower tier, any tier, are between a rock and a hard place on this. We can either provide services, continue to provide services, and I would maintain, perhaps not unnaturally, that we're doing a good job on that, and the satisfaction survey, as far as Braintree shows, would tend to suggest that. But recognising that it is still a financial burden upon taxpayers in the district, some of whom it won't make very much difference to, but to others it will make a significant difference. And we recognise that. We are naturally a low tax party. We would rather not increase taxes, but I think we do believe in high quality public services, and they do come at a cost. So it's a difficult balance. If I can ask Councillor Spray to deal with the issues that were raised by Councillor Abbott, I think about planning forums, and then Councillor Ritchie on why don't we just another 12,000, etc. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Spray, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Thank you,
well
Chairman.
done.
And thank you, Councillor Abbott. So I first would acknowledge that the establishing the members forum is coming forward, I think, a bit later than we would all have liked to have seen, but I can put that down to really pressure of other planning things happening towards the end of last year, which maybe slowed down the process a little bit. But my expectation is that I will be bringing this to March full council. It does need to come to council for approval because it's not a process that we've done before. There are governance issues and so on around it. So yes, hopefully we'll be coming to March council and then we can get it up and running. With regards to the budget for it, there is a departmental review going on at the moment on the fees and charges. And I think members will possibly have noticed at the appendix at the end, there is a long list of fees and charges for planning, probably a bit unwieldy and could do with tidying up. So there's a review underway for that. And as part of that, the fees for the members forum will be incorporated. The point being that if a developer wants to come and make a presentation to the members forum on a proposal, that they will pay for it. So there will be nil cost to BDC. So the answer, Councillor Abbott, is I think I will have hopefully a whole lot more information in March, but the budget for the members forum will actually take the form of fees paid by developers. So I hope that answers your question sufficiently.
Okay.
Could I just very quickly, sorry, Chair, but come back to that. Well, that's news to me. I don't know if it's news to other members. I'm just both interested in that answer, but also slightly concerned that doesn't that favour the well-heeled big national developers and their agents rather than other important developments which might be of interest to local communities where there wouldn't therefore be a forum if they don't want to pay the money?
I think not necessarily, and actually I don't know yet because I'm not sure it's been decided what the level of fees will be. I don't know whether it's going to be one sort of blanket fee for somebody wanting to make a presentation or whether there will be different levels depending on the size of the development. I don't know the answer to that. I'm not sure that actually, as I say, that's been determined yet, but I can obviously get a bit more detail for you on that. But we wouldn't want to, well, in my view, wouldn't want to prevent a smaller developer coming forward and making a presentation because, you know, it wasn't affordable for them. I think that would defeat the object of the exercise. That it's, you know, it's a fair point, Councillor Abbott, so I'll take it up with officers and see what they say. But I have to say on the point about, you know, nil cost to the council, that was always the intention right from the start, that a developer would pay the fee and there would be no cost to us. I'll see what else I can find out for you in the short term.
Okay, Councillor Spray, I think it's Councillor Ricky is next.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you. So to answer your question, Councillor Abbott, we've already got a significant balance left of the community grant scheme for this year. I think as of the 5th of January, it was £48,000, which we're already rolling over into next year. So next year, that already gives us a target of in excess of £100,000 to spend between us. So adding to that pot might put some undue pressure on those councillors that do find it a bit of a challenge to spend some of their allocation. So I think it'd be unfair to kind of add that additional burden. Secondly, with regards to kind of rolling any unspent funds further in the future, we're keeping an open mind about the Council Community Grant Scheme, and whilst this report sets out where that funding might be secured from collected balances from council tax, doesn't mean to say that we can't amend the Council Community Grant Scheme over the next 12 months or so. And in fact, it's something that both myself and officers periodically do, just to ensure that we're getting good value. It's a good scheme and it's not kind of at conflict or at odds with other schemes that we have across the district, or indeed with our county members. And there's always areas that we can improve on with regards to schemes like this too. So I wouldn't want to absolutely commit to the Council Community Grant Scheme might stay exactly in its current format. Indeed, it might change over the next 12 months. And of course, we'll be consulting with members if we do decide to do that. Thank you.
Thank you. So through you, Chairman, so that confirms it is rolling over at least into next year.
Correct. Yeah, this year's is rolling over into next year.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you for those responses. The next question we have is from Councillor Beavis. Councillor Beavis, over to you.
Thank you, Chairman. Just a couple of observations, if I may, and then just a couple of quick questions. I mean, I find myself chiming with you on the collection fund surplus. It's just how I feel, and I echo your words on that one. Pleased about the councillor grant scheme. I mean, still, it's a cut, but it's a step in the right direction. I personally would like to have seen it retained at its current level. Still slightly uneasy about 2.68. Bearing in mind the rising cost of living. And also just very quickly on the levelling up agenda, we're all using this word levelling up, aren't we? But for me, it's about fairness. And, when you look at our capital programme, it's still very Braintree centric. And, I just think that the north of the Braintree district is a sleeping giant, really. And I think, there's so much more we could do out in the rural patches. At last meeting, we spoke a bit about Platinum Jubilee. I know that our parishes are planning lots of events around Platinum Jubilee, and I just wondered whether the Cabinet have got any designs to do anything that's going to mark this occasion. I mean, we speak about some of the great stuff we're doing, but are we actually going to put up something that reflects the great work of our monarch? And finally, just a quick question on our budget papers. When it speaks about the underspends, is that in terms of this budget process, do the papers reflect every underspend by department? So a department's holding back an amount of money because didn't deliver a project or something this year. Does it reflect every department underspend? Thank you, Chairman.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Beavis. Councillor Batman, do you want to start off with that one? You're on mute, sir.
Better. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Beavis. I mean, I understand Councillor Mrs. Beavis's comments about not wanting to raise council tax and increase expenditure. We'd all like to do that. The problem is that we do have to come up with a solution as to if we are going to increase and we don't want to expenditure and we don't want to increase income, where does the money come from? It just doesn't grow on trees. On the issue of capital, I would suggest, I think there is an element when she says Braintree centric. We do recognise, of course, that Braintree is the largest of our 3 urban areas, but there are 2 other urban areas, one in the north, as she quite rightly points out, and one in the south. And I would ask her to await the final budget in terms of how that might be addressed. She talked about the north of the district being a sleeping giant. Chairman, I don't wish to upset you, but you will be aware as well as anyone that we have for at least 10 or 11 years had £600,000 worth of capital, which we have kept on the books and is still kept on the books at the moment, waiting for, which has been allocated and earmarked for Halstead. And I think it might even have been in the time, Councillor Mrs. Beavis, when you were around. So we're hoping to make some movement on that to the benefit of the residents. We're not taking it away from Halstead and its environs. So that would be that. I think I'm going to ask Phil Myers to correct me if I'm wrong, but yes, all the underspends from all departments, I think, are encompassed in the total figure. I can't think why they wouldn't be, but I can't see Phil on my screen. But
he's right
correct?
next to me, so I can. He's just about to.
Oh, is he?
Okay, over to you, Phil. Yeah.
Yes, so I think the reference to underspends is as part of the budget sort of service review. We look at where there have been underspends, and then where obviously those are deemed that they are ongoing. We have then sort of reflected those into the budget, so they do form part of the savings that have been identified, the £500,000. But inevitably you get some variances in year that we deem are either one-offs or at this point too uncertain to sort of embed into the base budget. So we just keep those ones under review as part of our normal budget monitoring.
Okay. Councillor Batman, you're muted again.
Sorry, I don't know whether we've answered all the questions from Councillor Beavis. If not, I'm happy if we've missed anything.
Councillor Beavis, quickly back to you to just.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Butland. Yeah, just very briefly on the Platinum Jubilee at marking the Monarch. Thank you.
Okay. Oh yes,
Councillor
indeed.
Ritchie,
yes.
I think.
And Councillor Ritchie is sticking his hand up. I think he wants to speak. So over to you, Councillor Ritchie. Yeah.
Indeed. So actually, I'm pretty pleased to report that we've held the first of our Jubilee planning meetings with council officers who have in fact been in touch with parish councils and town councils across the district. And actually, I'm just staggered as to just how much planning and events there are that are going to be carried out across the district. Just a very brief précis of what is going on. Great Notley have got a Jubilee themed fete. Twickenham Town Council have got on the event on the Thursday to time with the beacon lighting. Halstead have got the Beavers concert in the public gardens. Halstead Singers doing a performance. Styles did a lunch event on the Sunday. Great Maplestead have got events every single day on the 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and 5th. Shelford again, they've got a great menu of events set across the whole weekend. Activities, walks. Braintree Museum are tying up with some bits and pieces too, and there was plenty of actions for council officers and a few cabinet members from the last meeting too. But I can assure everyone here and yourself, Councillor Beavis, we have got a great deal going on, and I look forward to sharing that with everyone in due course. So there'll be a lot to be proud of that we celebrate as a district for the Platinum Jubilee.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Ricky, for that feedback. We'll move on now to the next question, which is Councillor Pritchard. Councillor Pritchard.
Thank you, Chairman. I just had a quick observation. Obviously, Braintree District Council do not operate in a vacuum when it comes to costs. I represent Bocking South, which is a ward in our Braintree town. We have mixed financial ability residents in our ward, and obviously to pass 2.68% onto them in the form of our increase is regrettable. And at this time when we're seeing energy increases across the board, I'm sure it's not something that we're doing lightly. But of course, BDC has its own energy costs to consider as just one single cost, if we think about that one element of all the costs that the council have to incur. And obviously we have energy to fuel our vehicles and electricity to light our buildings and heat our buildings, etc. And I'm sure it's not getting any cheaper for BDC as it isn't for our residents to do those things. The brief question I had relating to this was, how has BDC's energy costs changed in recent times? And I'm particularly thinking about the current civic year, perhaps compared to the prior civic year. And that might not be contained in this weighty document, and I'm happy to get an answer later. And also whether, more importantly, we're budgeting appropriately for what might be aggressive increases coming, as all our residents are experiencing. We're going to have a similar increase in BDC's energy costs, and I just wondered whether we budgeted for those sufficiently. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Batman.
Thank you, Chairman. Could I ask you to look towards Phil Myers again?
Yes, Councillor Myers. Yeah, Councillor Myers. Phil Myers. Sorry. Yes, over to you, sir.
Okay, yeah. So so we have made allowance within the budget for what we were projecting as increased costs in both energy and fuel. Obviously, those forecasts were made at a point in time, and therefore we will need to keep those under review. In terms of energy, we do engage an external company that advises, and I say that the increases we've reflected are quite significant, certainly a much higher percentage than we would normally have reflected. But as you know, it is a change in position, and obviously we will keep that under review as part of our normal sort of budget monitoring.
Okay, I think that answers that question. I think, Councillor Pritchard. Right, the next is Councillor Houston. Councillor Houston, you there?
Thank you, Chairman.
Oh,
yes,
yeah.
I'm
Well
here.
done.
Thank you,
Well
Chairman.
done.
Just a comment really about the councillor community grant underspend, if I can use that word. Not all underspend is necessarily unallocated. I mean, I have spent all of mine, although my figures don't show that. It's because I've allocated it to projects, and those projects are delayed because permission is needed from Essex County Council Highways, and until they give their permission we can't go ahead with the project. So that money looks as if it's unspent, but actually it is allocated. So that may also be true for other councillors throughout the district. Thank you.
Okay, I'm wondering if Councillor Ricky could just respond on that one.
If that's okay.
Yeah.
With your indulgence. Thank you, Chairman. Councillor Houston, I believe the figures that were provided to me were not inclusive of any earmarked projects yet to proceed. So the figure that we had was a true figure. As mentioned, if they were earmarked projects that were yet to happen, they were excluded from the that £48,000 as of the 5th of January this year.
Okay, I think that clarifies that. Right, next up is Councillor Abbott. One more time, Councillor Abbott.
Yeah, thank you for your indulgence, Chairman. It's just a very brief question as a result of what Councillor Ritchie said about the Jubilee celebrations. Could I ask, did the survey about parish and town councils go out to all parish and town councils? When did it go out, and in what format? Thank you.
Councillor Ricky, yeah, over to you.
Chairman, Councillor Abbott, it wasn't a survey that went out to town and parish councils. This was just us reaching out, asking them what their plans were, just so that we didn't duplicate any of their plans centrally. And also, it was an outreach with regards to advice, particularly around anything to do with legal advice on shutting areas to enable things like street parties, road closures, etc. So it was more of an outreach just to give advice rather than going out into consultation.
So was it selective, or did you go out to all parish and town councils?
I believe we've asked everyone to give us some details on what they were.
I don't expect the cabinet member to answer now, Chairman, but could he provide a note, please, to say when that was?
Yeah, of course, no worries.
Thank you, because I'm not sure I've seen this. Thank you.
Okay, all right. I've nobody else in the chat box at the moment, so thank you, members. Do any members have any further questions for cabinet members before we bring this item to a close? No, nothing else in the chat at the moment. So thank you all for your participation on this item. Members, we're asked to note, this is members of the Performance Management Scrutiny Committee, we are asked to note the updated report. For this item, I will be seeking your agreement that it is noted. Therefore, silence will be assent. However, if a member wishes to raise an issue in respect of this item, please indicate via the chat function. Please, can I have a member's agreement? I have nothing in the chat function, so thank you, members. The report has been noted. I would like to thank members of the Cabinet and Phil Myers, the Head of Finance, for their attendance this evening and their contribution to this meeting. It's much appreciated once again. So, members, as there is no urgent business this evening, this item concludes our business for this evening. Thank you all for your thank you all members and officers for their attendance and participation this evening. I will close this meeting of the Performance Management Scrutiny Committee at 8:33. Thank you, members, for your attendance this evening, and to all those watching at the broadcast via the Council's YouTube channel. Have a good evening. Thank you.
Thank you.